Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody here to Behind the Desk and In Depth with CEO, VPs, business leaders, and innovators. With me today is Mr. Doug Cornfield, so I'm going to pass the mic over to him, let him introduce himself, tell his title, position, and then the business that he represents. So, Doug, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. Doug Cornfield here. I'm the director of Disability Dream and Do Sports Camps. It's kind of a long story, but I have a son that was born with neither arm developed. And when he was just a baby, I was transitioning from Atlanta area to upstate New York and Corning, New York. And during that time, I was studying for my Series 7 with Merrill Lynch. Wow. And in coffee shops and what have you. I was reading a newspaper while I was still in Kennesaw, Georgia, basically. And I saw this article about a man named Dave Clark, who was a polio survivor that played professional baseball on his crutches. He had won the Heroes of Sports Award in Atlanta that year. And I'm like, who is this? What is this? Nothing makes sense. And I was a pretty high level athlete. I grew up in the sports world. My dad was a world-class runner. He played semi-pro basketball, and I kind of followed in those two sports as well. And here I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. How can you be 5'2" on crutches and play professional baseball? Well, the one thing that really didn't make sense is that Dave Clark grew up in Corning, New York, which is where I was transitioning to. So I was going from Atlanta to a town of 10,000 people. And Dave and I were able to connect, and that really kind of created. It didn't happen right away. Dave and I became friends, and I pushed him to write a book, and we have some special stories that we tell. But when I left Merrill Lynch, I told him I want to do something with this story. I didn't know what it was, and we wound up. I said, hey, we can do movies, we can do children's books, documentaries, all these things that we can do. And when Dave and I had our first business meeting, he said, Doug, what I really, really want to do. I want to run more sports camps for children with challenges and disabilities. So I put a name to it, put a marketing plan to it, and we started on our way.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, honestly, just between you and I mean, to have a child like that and then to be able to kind of see those obstacles that he grew up with and then to find a solution to that. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that just wouldn't even have connected the dots or tried to make those connections themselves. So kind of like obviously there's that aha moment, right? You found Doug and, you kind of saw his situation and you said, wow, I can kind of do this. In those early days, let's say like before the logos, the sponsors or anything that you have, the social media, like what was the hardest part of getting this off the ground? Like, was it the money? Was it the belief? Was it the logistics or just, like convincing people like, hey, this is a real thing and we really want you to participate?
The hardest thing to get off the ground, I was a lot younger when we got this thing off the ground. Money was obviously an issue. You have to fund these things because when I left the Merrill Lynch world, I left my salary behind too, my good income, and I had 7 kids at home. And so I had to figure out ways with not having a sugar daddy or sugar mommy in my back pocket or any of those kind of things. And Dave and I went down to Florida. We had these meetings. I was able to participate in a sports camp that he was doing with the Minnesota Twins organization. And that was my first taste of doing the sports camp like this. And that's what Dave said he wanted to do more of. And so I sat down. My son was actually going through some serious operations at that time. He actually had one leg shorter than the other. And so I was in a Ronald McDonald house with him, and we were trying to get him better, and it was a big, long process. This was not an easy thing. And I remember just hunkering down at some of the Baltimore coffee shops and just pulling up my computer at the time and researching who do I connect with, who do I contact with, start getting, meetings, appointments. And so it was just a matter of just reaching out. And probably the most frustrating thing for me is that nobody knew Dave's story. And so I had to figure out, I'm sitting here, I'm getting to know a story and I'm like, this is amazing. Everybody should want to jump onto this, movies, whatever. And, but he didn't ever promote his life story. And there's a couple of roadblocks I started hitting. Well, one, Dave Clark's one of the, other than being Mike Smith, it's probably, one of the most popular names in the world to be a Clark and to be a Dave Clark. And then they had this music group called the Dave Clark Five, which I kind of didn't even know. I knew a few of their songs because it's a group that competed with the Beatles back in the 60s. They had songs like Glad All Over that I kind of knew when I heard it. but I didn't really know the Dave Clark 5. But if you put Dave Clark in YouTube, guess what comes up? Dave Clark 5, pages and pages and pages of the Dave Clark 5. And so I felt like I was promoting a story. I said it was like a story of a needle and a stack of needles, and it's like, how do you make your needle shine a little brighter? And then I would talk to like the Baltimore Orioles or somebody like that, because David worked with the Baltimore Orioles, but this was a couple years later, and they didn't know him and they didn't know his story. And they'd almost look at me like, you're kidding me, right? He did what?
Yeah. Wow.
What? That doesn't make any sense. And so then I started realizing I had to start dumbing his story down to make it believable for people.
Which is crazy to believe. First off, I'm going to go back to the beginning comment. You said you had 7 little ones at home. So you're as a father myself, you're a hero already.
Well, or crazy.
Yeah.
It's probably on the crazy side.
Let's go with the hero side, because I like that. But,
right.
But man, that's crazy. You know what? It's kind of, I don't want to say scary, right? But the fact that you would have to dumb down this like crazy overcoming of obstacles, that somebody needs to really believe it. It's like too good to believe, or too hard to believe that somebody could do what he's done in his lifetime. So kudos to you. Walk me through like one of those, like, oh man, like what did we just get ourselves into, right? The moments and like the events.
How many of them do you want? Oh my gosh. Which one? What time of year? I mean, the biggest obstacle for us is we had to raise the money. And I remember one event that we did, because again, to make Dave's story even more unbelievable, he also played ice hockey in college, even though he couldn't skate.
Oh my gosh.
And he's called games all the way to the NHL level. He's gotten his cup of coffee as an announcer at the NHL level, and even scouted, minor league, although baseball is more of his story. Hockey is a huge love of his. And so because of that, we figured we could do baseball camps and hockey camps. And here I am working my tail off. We're trying to do everything we can, trying to figure out revenue. I mean, I'm putting 15 hours a day in, probably, between trying to sell something, trying to market, trying to run the events, all those kind of things. And I remember we got to one of our events. We were working with the Elmira hockey team, which was in the ECHL. And so we did. So it was a closer event. Dave comes up from Florida, and we're putting on this D3DAY camp, and we're getting T-shirts. I'm getting the food. We have this great event, and I'm literally at $0.
Wow.
I mean, other than taking on debt, I'm at 0.
Wow.
And I don't even know how I'm going to pay for T-shirts, and I'm pulling all this stuff together. And we did put out donation bins, and I learned quickly that you don't raise money from the people that come to these events. They're all tapped out. They have these medical issues. They have if they have to pay for parking, it might preclude them from coming.
Makes sense.
It's that kind of scenario. So for them to even put $1 in the donation bin is something that's not likely going to happen. But I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, I have got to figure out how to raise money for this, because Dave and I at that point were really doing it, and still are really doing it, out of our own pockets. And so it was just that whole, how do we create revenue?
Yeah.
And, and I thought for sure we could get Dave on stage and speaking, but he didn't really have a speaking reel. I mean, there's just so many things that we've been able to do since then. And I remember telling Dave, well, we can get you to speak. And he's like, who would want me to speak? I mean, he'd gotten maybe $500 before for a speaking event. And I'm like, well, we got to get more than that. And I remember our first time we got $10,000 for a speaking event. He's like, who would pay me that? That was his perspective,
Yeah.
It's different now, because he understands even the value that his story has, I think now, more so than he did years ago when I started doing this. He's like, I didn't even know I had a story. That's how because he just lived it. So
well, that's such a humble approach. Too many times. And I guess, him being in the position that he was in, it was probably humbling at a lot of levels and a lot of times in his life and careers and growing up. So that's really, it's really fascinating to have somebody like that feel as humbled when it's like, man, I do have a story. So, and the fact that you're out there kind of helping him promote this is awesome. So
Yeah.
Kudos to you guys. I mean, obviously it's coming out of your pocket. It's kind of one of the things we want to do, maybe make connections, but really fascinating.
Yeah.
You know, when you're putting on events, you know, with pro teams and the kids' families and the kids themselves, and there's so many like moving parts. What did you not know at the beginning that you wish someone had actually sat you down and told you, like, hey, here's what you need to know?
You know, this is where I'm, as far as running the event, which if I was going to say what we're excellent at, you know, everybody says, oh, I'm an expert. It's actually running the event. And fortunately, Dave had been doing this since the 70s. So he kind of tapped into an aura, a feel, dealing with so many different limitations, so many different challenges. All I had to walk in and do is tweak it. You know, how do we do this for more than 30 people? How do we do this for 80 people? And I had to learn those kind of things along the way, but I don't think it would have been good for somebody to tell me, because they would have told me wrong. I had to learn it on our path. And, you know, I'll give you, for instance, when we started doing these events, we were really trying to do more of a one-on-one. We were getting the whole team, and they were shooting for like 25 to 30 participants. That's it. And so, and the Fort Myers team would come out. It was almost like a one-on-one with all these kids. And then we did one with the Binghamton Mets, which was the AA here. Closer, we went and said, hey, we sat down with them, and they wound up saying, yeah, let's do it. In the first year, I think we shot for 40 participants, because that's about, you know, what we've been used to. Well, the second year, I run into the general manager at the time, Jim Weed, at a Sam's Club doing a fundraiser, because we were fundraising all the time at that point. And he comes out of a Sam's Club, sees me, and I said, hey, Jim, glad you're here. We might have a problem. And he goes, what's that? And I said, well, I haven't even sent out an email yet. We already have 45 people signed up for our event. Wow. And he just looked at me, says, look, bring it on. Let's do it. You know, of course, that meant more money, more T-shirts, more food, more, you know, more all that stuff for me at that point. And we wound up having, so we went from like having our biggest camp at 35 to having nearly 100.
Wow.
You know, wow. And I had T-shirts, because I actually had 80 people signed up for this particular event. And we had a group home show up that didn't sign up. So I had another 20.
Oh, wow.
And so now I had to figure out, okay, how do we set this up? How do we spread them out? How do we do all these things? And so it was a good learning curve for me to say, oh, you know what, we can do this for 80 to 100, 120. Now that's I've learned that's probably our sweet spot. To do it much more becomes more cumbersome for the team. It's too expensive. I mean, from a perspective right now, but even if money was just, we have $30,000 for a sponsorship, which is our larger sponsorship type thing, to be a title sponsor. If we have a full sponsorship like that, to get more than 100 participants, 120 participants, starts diminishing the return. You know, so
yeah, I can see that. That's an incredible turnout. I mean, the fact that it seems like people just started talking about it, right? You didn't have to really
100%.
Put it out there. They just started saying, oh my gosh, did you guys hear? And then they show up.
Right.
That says a lot about what you guys are doing to the community and to help these kids and getting people excited about the opportunity here.
Yeah, it's almost worse, because from a perspective like my Hudson Valley Renegades. So then COVID kind of crashed us, and then, you know, we were specifically trying to go low again for the attendance, because we had to spread people out, we'd be safe, you know, all those things. And then the last couple of years, obviously, attendance is starting to go up. And like this year for Fort Myers, or not for Fort Myers, Hudson Valley, which is with the Yankees organization, I think I had over 100 people signed up almost in a day.
Wow.
You know, and that was before I sent out the press releases. You know, and so with that, you know, then I have to cut it off and put people on a waiting list and, you know, all those kind of things. But the sad part of that for me, from a marketing perspective, it's hard for me to market it on social media, because then the people that I'm trying to market to, the businesses, but then the people with disabilities want to sign up, and I'm already full. So it's waving through that. So most of my marketing is one-on-one, trying to get with businesses, trying to get with people to help support us. And, you know, and because if I do promote it too much on Facebook, if it's not a first year event, we get too many people.
Yeah, I could see that being a problem. So what it sounds like almost is you guys need like more, like, first off the funding, but the frequency at which you guys can host these events. I mean, what would be the optimal amount of times in a year? Would you say, hey, if we could have 52 events, one a weekend, or if we could have 3 every weekend going in different states, that, you know, we're growing at a point where
Yeah.
we're
If money was like simply zero option, you know, I would have to, you know, get a director in each region, and you could have 20 events in probably 4 or 5 quadrants of the country, between hockey, baseball, football, basketball, all sports, you know, partnering with different things that I've already thought about, golf. I mean, and then literally not even going just sports, because really Disability Dream and Do, we want to explore potential. And that potential, like we have a young girl, she just had her own song that she recorded. I saw it online. Her name's Sarah. And so Sarah was completely blind, and she'd been coming to her camp since she was a child in Fort Myers. And she would sing the national anthem as a child. It was outrageous. It was really good. And I'm a vocalist, so I'm pretty particular about, you know, giving credit to good voices. And so anyway, so she comes, and now she's gone through college. She's writing music, she's singing music, she's doing her thing.
Wow.
And completely blind. And so why not do Disability Dream and Do music camps? And why not do Disability Dream and Do art camps and acting camps and, you know, business camps, whatever it might be. Disability Dream and Do would expand to much greater with greater funding. You know, all those sports and hockey and baseball are 2 major niches that we've competed with and done with.
Yeah, I feel maybe this is a personal, but a lot of, I don't want to say exclusion, but restriction, right? But no, I can see your vision of why not get into the arts, right? And really find, you know, kids that want to get into painting and building and you know, things that maybe they're restricted to currently just due to their nature of where they're at. So that's amazing. So now, you know, you're working with sponsors and pro teams and some volunteers with the Hall of Fame members, like the whole ecosystem, right? So like, what do you think you and your co-founders actually do differently in how you build relationships that keep people coming back year after year?
For the camps, it's super simple. We put on a great program. You know, I mean, when those kids get on the field with professional sports guys and baseball and all the volunteers, the energy that's created, it is a day they never forget on so many levels. And it's not just for the participants, it's for the volunteers, it's for the caregivers. A lot of our messaging would go to the parents and the caregivers. And then you have things like happen with the pro athletes that never forget this. They never forget the event. This year, and we've seen this more times with the Philadelphia Phillies organization, we did an event with them last year. They actually had a pretty bad season going into D3DAY. Immediately went on like an 8-game winning streak and had a nice winning record, almost to the point where they were getting a shot at the playoffs. You know, as far as the turnaround.
Yeah.
And it happened. It literally happened the day after D3DAY. Now, we had done one with the Yankees it was the Tampa Bay Rays organization at that time in Hudson Valley. And they were actually a bad losing record in the first half of the season. We caught them earlier in the summer for that particular year. They went on to win everything.
Wow. It's that inspiration, right? Motivation, inspiration behind the scenes.
You know, should we take credit for that? We weren't on the field playing. No. Are we going to take some credit for it? Absolutely. Yeah. You know, but I have Dave Clark and Dave Stevens, these 2 amazing people that have looked at the game of baseball and sports so differently in their mindset, their mind game. And now we're giving these pro players a development tool where they're on the field realizing, you know, how special and lucky I have it. It's not as much of a grind anymore, because playing 160 games a year or whatever it is, it's a grind. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they're seeing real grind.
Yeah.
Which is getting up and taking care of somebody a whole day, or somebody that's in a wheelchair and will never be out of the wheelchair, or somebody that's doesn't have legs or has intellectual challenges, or whatever the situation is. That's a real grind. And now all these players have a perspective that is game changing from a development perspective. And they take that mental, and then we give them a speech, usually inside the locker room when we can, where Dave Clark, 5'2" on crutches, 10 years of pitching a knuckleball in the minor leagues, coached in the Olympics, coached for the Atlanta Braves, coached for Major League Baseball, owns his own team. He bought the Indianapolis Clowns, the famous Indianapolis Clowns back in the 80s. And so here you've got this guy coming to you, a coach, a manager, a guy that won 3 championships in the highest level of Swedish major leagues, coming to you and saying his spiel, which is obviously it's a dream and do kind of spiel. It's a mental game. It's that toughness and getting that into the players. So you kind of combine D3DAY with all of these elements, and it's really just a win, 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 win. It kind of keeps going.
Yeah, such an inspiration too.
Yeah,
I mean, you guys are carrying the momentum. Obviously, you started. It's growing. You've been doing this for years now. If I honestly step back, right, and I followed you around for a full like D3DAY / season, like where would I see the biggest like time sinks? Maybe the repetitives, or like why is it still so hard for us to do, right? Like what's the parts of the running the organization that you just step back and go, I wish I could make this simpler?
that raising money, marketing. We were doing the grind ourselves. Our primary fundraising before COVID is I created my own line of products. We were selling local honey as our primary product. Local honey in Florida, local honey in New York, upstate New York, and selling that downstate, selling it all our places, promoting it, marketing it. It was a really interesting cash flow. I tried to transition that online, but honey's very difficult. How do you sell local honey online to California? It's very difficult. But it's also very heavy. And so to send one of our jars of honey, just the shipping cost was probably $8 to $9. And Amazon had everybody faked out that shipping's free. Well, it's not really free, let me tell you. And so to send a $20 jar of honey and then add $9 to it, it just became too difficult to send that on, to do that online. And then you got to, I don't know if you've ever marketed a product like that online. You've just got to have so much money behind you to promote it and to push it. And so we were doing it. We were doing that well. Our avenues got cut off from that. And so I had to transition more to a typical sponsorship marketing. But if I was going to say what would make, and what we're trying to do right now is create marketing, not really nonprofit side, but for-profit marketing to help us create those revenues that's good for the business as well as good for D3DAY. And that's my real vision. We want this not to be supported by gifts and donations. We want this to be supported by business and marketing. Our speaking events, that was a big part of our pay. That became more difficult after COVID. It's starting to percolate again. So if you're wanting some great keynote speakers, I'm only about 10%. I put Dave at about 90%, or the other Dave. I'm just the icing on the cake, as Dave Clark would say. But it's pretty powerful when you're rolling up, and I say literally rolling up because Dave's mostly in a scooter right now. This guy that has this amazing stories to tell about 10 years of pitching in the minor leagues, going on to get hurt, buying a team, playing first base for his own team, coaching, managing, owning, scouting, all of these things, but all the stories that come along with that. It doesn't really matter what the theme of the conference is. I guess unless it's pole dancing, we can probably figure out a theme that works, and we probably could come up with one with pole dancing, but Dave's not allowed to tell those stories. But we're putting together what we're calling the Dugout Design contest, which with the beautiful dugout dog. We're calling him Doug, D-U-G. They named it after me, and I was really uncomfortable with that at first because I'm really more about promoting Dave Clark and Dave Stevens. And so I said, well, we have to have dogs for Dave Clark and Dave Stevens. And so we have this beautiful dog that's on crutches playing baseball. And we have another dog with no legs to represent Dave Stevens on a skateboard being real cool. And some fun stuff like that. But really, really high-end designs with this Australian group called Soul U that's marketing this with us. Wow. And so, but we're going to launch it with digital first. And one of the things that we're created right now is a contest where people can design a baseball. And for a small entry fee, they get to design a baseball with opportunities to win. So it's supporting D3DAY. It's creating a creative side. They're going to get a digital Doug that's inclusive to just them. So like almost like a digital coin kind of thing with Doug the dog, Dave the dog, Davey the dog, Dig the dog, all the different dogs that we're going to have in this dugout movement. And then that ball is going to come to life and be an actual ball, and they actually can profit. The winner is going to be able to profit from that ball.
you're juggling all this stuff, right? You're juggling the signups, you know, with special needs and families, pro teams, again, travel sponsors. Where in the process would you say the details kind of slip through the cracks the most, or like maybe keep you up at night while you're
Yeah, well, I still sleep even when the pressure's on, thankfully, because I got to keep my health. But when the pressure's on, it's constantly where this, I guess, the things slip through the cracks right now is keeping the revenue push going. Because once I start running camps, then it becomes very difficult to follow up with people. It becomes difficult to keep the revenue push going because I'm only one person, even though Dave and Dave are helpful. They're not really the push behind the business, although Dave Clark's, you know, pretty involved. So, you know, it's that slip through of follow up and, you know, and outreach. And we were at that point before COVID where people were reaching out to us. And obviously I want to get back to that where it's like, oh my gosh, this guy can come to our event and speak. How much? You know, I was getting that. That's become less and less since COVID because there just wasn't very many events. And of course we are pitching a movie deal, which is going on in Dave's Clark life. And if something like that snaps, then that's a big game changer as well. And it's being pitched to people. I could drop names and you would know those names and whatever, and we'll see if any of them actually pick it up. But our heart's desire, our bullseye is how do we raise enough money to not just do 6 to 10 camps a year, but 50 to 100 camps a year, 200 events a year, 300 events a year. And obviously then I've got to hire a lot of people that, you know, need to get paid a living wage in order to help me make that happen.
Yeah, and that seems to be in a lot of people and organizations in your situation. A lot of the problem is just kind of generating the revenue and staying consistently on top. I mean, I'm sure there's a process that probably feels most old school that you utilize, and like where would you think, like, if we could fix this crack, right, it would be a game changer for us?
If we could make online feel like being in person just a little bit more. And I don't think it can happen. And so online is great because you and I are connecting, but there's still an element of that interpersonal that just can't happen. We can't shake hands. We can't, you know, see each other in our own elements. And so I don't think that's going to happen, but getting back to where we're meeting in person and having that shoulder rubbed, that's the old school, and that's what I was used to, and that's what I was good at. All the businesses that I was at, whether it was at Merrill Lynch or before that, I was a vice president for an entertainment company that did extremely well. Most of those things were interpersonal connections, and you almost need to sense the vibe. You need to feel that person's, whether he's genuine or not, in the room. And sometimes it's very difficult to do just on a Zoom call in 30 minutes or whatever it is. And so it's good. But getting back to that interpersonal connection, I think that's the old school that we're still missing through this technology hit. You know, but hopefully they can feel my genuineness as as they're listening to this podcast. And you know, we're looking for branding partners, or we're looking for marketing CMOs and people that want to get their word out there, but also do good in the world. And we're looking for that business owner that wants to get his product, you know, branded both digitally and physically, and then put on social media, because we do have the means to getting millions of hits. You know, we have millions of hits on some of our social media. I don't know exactly how many, but through some of our different things, you know, probably 10, 15, 20 million views, you know, on our social media stuff. How do we push that forward, but with a branding partner behind us, like my marketing boost? You're talking about incentives. I just got off the phone with one of my sponsors, Marco Torres, who runs a thing called Marketing Boost for small businesses, and he has a means where I can literally give people a trip to the Dominican or anywhere, you know, all places all around the world, and for, you know, paying the taxes or a low tax cost or whatever. But if they join with us, I have the ability to give them a nice trip as well. And so those will be part of our incentive packages with the Dugout movement as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. I do agree. I mean, I think the marketing aspect is very difficult, and I'm sure it's just staying on top of it. And there's a lot of, you know, what we're finding and trying to create those personal touches, right? Utilizing technologies to make it feel more genuine.
Yeah.
I think is going to be a huge accomplishment as we roll into this next kind of era in 26 and beyond. And I think somebody like you guys are going to be able to really take advantage of. I mean, there's a lot of AI options that, you're finding these social media platforms are utilizing to make their users feel
Right.
more genuine and part of it. So it's really neat. If you guys, to kind of look into the future of D3DAY, and let's say it's, 3, 5, maybe 10 years from now, and there's one, kind of outside of the marketing and fundraising, right? Like one big operational, strategic headache that you'd say like, yeah, we used to struggle with that. And now it just runs so smooth in the background. So we can actually focus on our mission to like take care of these kids. What do you think that's going to be or could be?
It's gonna be generated by finances, by marketing, but then somebody that literally comes along and just runs the business, and then Dave and I just show up at the events. I mean, that's ideally where we want to be, so we can just do what we do great, which is show up at the events and give kids and young adults and the parents and even the players this inspirational time of their life. I mean, it's just all the back end stuff, I mean, the finances, the accounting, all of the stuff that's just no fun to do, along with all the other fun stuff. Not that I'm about working. I don't not like doing the the work, but there is only so much you can do, and what we do best is get in front of people, putting Dave Clark and Dave Stevens. And I have a whole book, and Pulling Each Other Along book, that has 30 other stories of people of inspiration, mostly people in the sports world, most people with disabilities. Terry Bradshaw, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, wrote the foreword, and Rocky Blyer's in the book and his amazing story, and he became a friend of mine. And these are the people that I've met along the way. But when you're reading a book like that, and you can put those people and actually meet them and find out, they're real people, they had real struggles, whether it's intellectual or physical. And then you get to hear their stories, but hopefully you get to hear their stories when you're young enough to say, oh, you know what? If he can play professional baseball on crutches, what can I do? And then you're hearing it from him saying, you know what? Don't hold those children back. Let them explore their potential, because you just don't know what their potential is unless you let them do it. And so Dave has all these stories to just say, this is what my parents do. He was a forerunner, in this stuff. And it was scorned upon. When he went out on a baseball field in Ocala, I think it was no, this wasn't Ocala. It was one of in the mid 70s. He was playing for the Indianapolis Clowns, which is getting a lot of fame right now through the Savannah Bananas. So Dave was a part of this team. He comes out to a relief pitch, walking on his crutches. This guy in the crowd yelling, knocked the crippled bastard out.
Oh my God. Wow.
Dave gives him the finger. Tries to hide it with his glove. Of course, his coach saw it, comes over to him and berates Dave for, giving the finger to the crowd. And he says, but Skip, he doesn't care. He says, if you're going to play for me, you got to be able to take that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so in a minor league way, Dave was like, for the disability world, a Jackie Robinson. And he got scorned by his players, by the team, by the crowd, all this stuff. And so he had experienced all this way before it was popular to get out and play, with a missing leg or with a missing arm or, on crutches. He was scorned. And so he had to deal with that in a very different way. He's definitely a forefather in the disability sports world. And sadly, his story is still mostly unknown. He had this amazing career. He's been the Heroes of Sports Award. He's gotten awards at the White House. He's, by President Clinton, he gave him the Giant Steps Award. He's the Bo Jackson Courage Award winner. He just got a Got Grit Award on another podcast we were on. And, he's got all of these things that are truly amazing, yet most people have never heard of him.
Yeah, which is just, it's unbelievable, especially with the way that we can touch so many people just through the avenues, like I've said, utilizing tools like this. And, maybe in the future we'll get the Daves on here and with yourself, and we'll just let them share their story. And
there's lots of them.
Yeah. We'll do the right ones, right?
Yeah.
But it's amazing to watch you. If you, to kind of, I don't want to say finalize, but, what kind of feedback, one of my last questions, I guess, what kind of feedback have you received from the families and the kids that participate in this that have really, one, stuck out in your mind? Two, what does that feedback look like? And three, how has that changed what you're doing today moving forward in the business?
So I tell you, when things get low, and we're really at a low point right now too, just financially, it's hard coming out of the new year, all those kind of things. And so just getting back on track financially, getting caught up from 2025 at this point. But I tell you what keeps me going is the actual events. And this particular thing, there's a couple of them in my mind. One's a dad. Most of them are women, mothers that come up to us. So Dave, because he's in a scooter, part of our event is they get to do an event and then they get to come back to a game. We get them tickets. We do some on-field stuff, some high-five games out on the field, first pitches. I even usually sometimes take a child into the press box to get an inning to talk about D3DAY on the radio, those kind of things. So that's our second part. But Dave and I usually sit in the ADA section because he's rolling up and I pull up a seat beside him. I'm up and down because I'm meeting with the people, all that stuff. But this has happened on numerous occasions where a mother will start walking to Dave and I to thank us. Gets to us, gets so emotional she can't get the words out.
I can believe that.
They can't even say thank you. They just hug us, whatever. They cannot get the words out. And that's happened to us more than once. And it happened, one time the father, it was more the other way around. He just kept blathering, it was just, he was like in tears, weeping about how this impacted his kids. And then, we have stories where Dave changed, Dave or whatever, the camps did get people to go and say, you know what, if Dave can do this, I can go do this. We have one, there's so many stories like that and different connections. We've had a couple of players actually connect with a child on our team, make it to the bigs. One of those is a Billy and Ben Revere, Billy Adams and Ben Revere. They connected, stayed all through his pro career. Literally, Billy went to his wedding, the whole bit. And Billy's Down syndrome and deaf, and they just had this connection. There's another one happening right now that they met at our Yankees event. He's not with the Yankees anymore, but the child and this young pro player have connected in such deep ways. And but for me, it's when I see a parent, because I'm a parent with a child with a disability, when they come up and they can't even say thank you. That's the reward that we get.
I can't even understand that true emotion, that raw emotion that probably comes through. As I get older with my kids, I used to laugh at my dad. You cry at Hallmark commercials, and now I do the same thing, right? So, with somebody in the position, in the shoes that you have, that I'm sure a lot of parents can connect with, that say, look, I've never had another person that is in the same exact situation that experienced this, to share that emotional connect with you is probably just one of the highlights of their years, not to mention your own. So that's incredible. I appreciate, hopping on here. I know, anybody that's going to be viewing this, if you want to let them know where to find information about you guys, plug in any kind of website, social media that you have.
I mean, D3DAY is the best place to go. We have a speaking page there. We got our sponsorship page there. I'm updating that right now for our events this year. I have my digital card that you can get to. I think if you click on my picture or something, it goes to my digital card. But I'm pretty easy to find because there's not a whole lot of Doug Cornfields. My Doug Cornfield Jr. just walked out the door, but other than me, there's not really a lot of Doug Cornfields out there. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's an easy place to find me, or just our contact page, on our website, d3day.com is probably the easiest to go. And you can follow, if you Google D3DAY, all one word, D, the number 3, DAY. If you just Google that or search that on your whatever your AI button is at this point, ChatGPT, Perplexity, whatever it is, just Google D3DAY and it's going to be us. It's going to come up us.
I love that. And then you've got the D3DAY HOF or Hall of Fame. So
so we're looking for Hall of Fame members. If you want to personally be in a Hall of Fame, this is a great way to reach out to us. We promote you at all of the camps. We'll give some other things in there as far as best we can, but basically you're personally sponsoring D3DAY kids to be able to participate in our camps across the country.
It's incredible. Again, Doug, I want to thank you for your time. I know the viewers are going to really enjoy this inspirational story, providing kind of a good feedback, young entrepreneurs themselves, other leaders ways to connect. Anybody viewing, if you want, you can always just DM me. I'll certainly get the connection between you and Doug himself now that I have his contact. This will probably be, I will obviously request an ongoing podcast with you guys. Just love the story, love the inspiration, super inspiring. So Doug, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a joy. And yeah, let's get Dave and Dave on here and tell the stories, because really they're storytellers, and I can be too. We got so many stories to tell, not just about D3 Day, but about their life. I mean, it's just incredible. So let's get them on here as well.